But before we begin our report on the Philippines, let's have a word of prayer. If you can bow your heads with me or kneel. Our loving Father in heaven, we're so thankful and grateful for all that you have done for us. We thank you for the awesome privilege that it is to serve in an army of people that are wanting to get your three angels' messages out. And I pray that each one of us may have that vision of a finished work. And I pray that you'll please help us, that we will have a fire kindled in our hearts for those that are lost. And that you will please burden us, for we will be held accountable for those that go to a Christless grave. And we pray you'll please help us. Direct us as we go through this mission report. May it be an encouragement to each one of us, is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So again, I'm not going to be able to go through all the stories. Last week we ended about an hour into our mission report, so I'm going to have to quickly go through this first part. I went to lots of different places where we have churches. Now, just as a quick review, we have 70-plus churches in just the southern island of Mindanao. This is the most southern island of the Philippines. There's about just a little over 7,000 islands in the Philippines, in a group of islands. This is one of the biggest ones, and there's about somewhere around 75 churches in this one island. And so I haven't even visited all the churches that we have down there, but this trip I visited a lot of them. And so each one is very, very unique. Each village is unique. Within the village, within the church itself, there's very unique stories that happen. I'm going to briefly run through some of these. This village of Upper Tibanban is a village that you have to hike to. There's no motorized vehicles, not even motorcycles, in this village. This is Pastor Aki. He's the one who got the work started in this part of the Mindanao Island, which is in Davao Oriental, a very remote, a very dark area. This is where spiritualism reigns. But Pastor Aki used to be a Roman Catholic, and then he became a part of a break-off Roman Catholic church called the Remnant Church of God, in which they worshipped Rizal. Jose Rizal was the one who liberated the Filipinos from Spanish control. And so they actually thought that he was actually an apostle from God, sent from heaven, and so they thought that, well, why not worship him? So this religion started as a result of them worshiping Jose Rizal. But this pastor, very interesting that he does one-on-one Bible studies, but his vision is much bigger than that. His vision is to go back into these churches that he used to pastor in and bring them into the fold. And so that's what his main goal is. And so he has brought many, many churches, not just individuals, but churches, whole churches, even split churches into the Seventh-day Adventist message. And this is one of them, the Upper Tibanban Church. Very small church. It was just bustling with people. This is Roldan, the Bible worker that is on the table there. He's putting a light bulb. Someone asked me, what in the world is he doing? That's the only picture I had of him, sorry. He was changing our light bulb. It wasn't, they saw that I was having a hard time reading, so I was using my flashlight to read, and so, I better change the light bulb. So they changed the light bulb for me anyways. He's the Bible worker here. Very, very solid in our doctrines, and every night he has worship. He works by day as a farmer, and he works as a Bible worker by night. That's how dedicated it is. Every single night at sundown, you will find almost 40 people in this church having worship. And this is part of worship time. We're not going to play that. These are some of the people that are a part of this church. You saw how little this church really is. It's about 12 feet wide by about 15 feet long, and nearly about 40 people, 40 adults worship here, 30 to 40 adults worship here, and there's as many children as there are adults in many of these villages. And so this church, we're actually going to build them a bigger church because of this. The work started here many years ago with a man having a dream about 4 persons. You remember that dream that I told you about last week? Yeah, he saw a vision of 4 Filipinos and a white guy. And came into his village, and he saw that whatever they were teaching, we needed to listen to. And so the first person that he saw in his dream, we'll skip by some of these, was Pastor Aki, this man right here with the microphone. Pastor Aki was the first one to enter this village and start preaching the 3 angels' messages. And then the second person that he saw was this young man by the name of Junalet. He came and started preaching to them. And then the third person that he saw was this man here, Pastor Nanding, that's holding the table. Pastor Nanding came in. He started teaching about the law of God. By this time, they had already given up their idols and stopped worshiping Jose Rizal and Mary and all these other idols and got rid of them. And then he saw, this has nothing to do with me, but he saw me. I was the 4th white man in the dream that he saw, strengthening the church here, really, really strengthening the church. So anyways, there's all kinds of details about that story. This is Roldan's wife. She is an English teacher, and so we have English material, children's material for her to read to the children. I just had a real burden this time because there's so many kids that are coming up into the faith, into the fold, and they don't have the foundation. They don't have the privileges like our children do here with storybooks. And so we bought some storybooks for the churches. So we're going to build a larger church for them as a result. I'm going to skip by Mapula. But if anybody remembers Brother Leo, he's the one I'm going to show you here in just a second. I wish my thing would move faster. Remember Larry? If you remember this from last year, he's the one that got sliced across his abdomen. And actually his bowels were out. He was cut so deep that his bowels were coming out. He had to travel many hours by these palm boats up to a hospital. There was no road. There was nothing to get to the hospital. So they had to take a palm boat and lost so much blood in the process that he passed out on the way, and they had to carry him into Mati, which is the closest hospital. This is way out. This is a place where you have to take motorcycles to or 4-wheel drive jeepneys to actually get to. But he is recovering fine now. He's living near Pastor Aki, and he's working as a farmer there. We had joint worship here. I'm going to skip by some of these. Remember, Sabbath begins at 4 a.m. in the morning. I was having a hard time getting out of bed at 6 o'clock this morning. Let's keep going here. I want to get to where we left off. Amongst these churches here, there is about, just in the Davao Oriental, there was about 300 people just at this joint worship here. There's many of them that are not here yet. This is how fast, and these are churches where whole churches have come into the fold as a result of Pastor Key's work among these people. Most of these people are Ephrodiabics. They were into this. It's a very spiritualistic church where they worship these Jose Rizal and Mary and all kinds of idols. We're going to a baptism here. Here at this baptism, I think we baptized 30 plus people. The Bible workers, 35 persons. The Bible workers had done a phenomenal job just preparing people from baptism. I see how the Bible workers have greatly improved their work among the people just from the training that we do, because everywhere I go, I train people. Train Bible workers, train the pastors, train the elders and deacons. Okay, let's start here in Lamtimbang. So from here from, this is Davao Oriental area. We traveled over here into South Cotabato, which is a heavy Muslim area. In fact, you'll find a huge mosque in this area here. One time when we traveled through there, it was called, they call them critical areas. We were hiding in the back of a big truck. And that's where, so when we travel through some of these areas, when we went through there before, when we were in the back of this truck hiding, we saw military swarming all over this area here. And the reason being is that the Muslim extremists there had beheaded 19 Filipino military people. And so it was very, very critical area. I don't know why they took us there, but they did. But we were in a big truck and we felt fairly secure, fairly hidden. So this is the area that we were in. This is another village that we traveled to, only accessible by motorcycle. No motor traffic whatsoever besides motorcycle. We have to cross this footbridge to get across the river. Through some of these. But to get to this village, I mean, oftentimes you had to get off your motorcycle and walk because the road was so treacherous, so many rocks, that we could, there's just no way we'd fall off the motorcycle. So getting to the village, a very remote village. These are a couple of our pastors that came with us. You can see the church in the background there. So it's situated along a river. This is where everything happens. You wash, you wash your dishes, you go to the bathroom, you cook, clean, everything on this river. This is one of the, by the way, that was called a CR. You remember what CR means? CR, if you want a bathroom, you ask for a CR. And that means comfort room. Now, when you look at this, that doesn't look like a very comfortable room, does it? That doesn't look like a comfortable. But this was the only bathroom in the entire village. And they built that just for me. I was very, very thankful. Here you got footbridges across the river. This is where you wash your dishes. This is where you bathe. The river becomes everything to these people. You're cooking right next to it. You want water, you get it out of the river. This is the little hut in which we stayed in. It was made out of bamboo, so you sleep on bamboo floors. It's not bad for sleeping, I suppose. Depends what you're used to. Kitchen. I want to stop right here. I went past this quite quickly. The brethren there asked in an email, Brother Tim, Pastor Tim, he's the one back here in the background, asked if we could help out with another project. Let me tell you, when I go over there to the Philippines, you want to help everybody, but there's no way you can. When you look at the defects among children, it is alarming. Here is a little child with cleft lip, as you can see. And as soon as I took just one look at that child, here comes all the rest of the parents. Man, look at my child too, and look at my child. And I was like, oh, I want to help them all. I want to take them all to the hospital and get them, get surgery. But I'll tell you just another story here in just a little bit about some of these things. But anyways, if we are interested as a church to help out some of these kids in this one village of Lantimbog, I would be very, very happy if we could help them out. Helping them get surgery. Because like little Angel, she, which I'll show you a picture of in a little while, we had raised money to have her leg. Anybody remember little Angel who had her leg burnt? So her right leg was burnt up to about right here. She got her house caught on fire when she was 1 month old. She couldn't get away. And then the other one burnt really, really badly down the lower part of her extremities. We had surgery on her, and she's doing very, very well now. So anyways, another project for us as a church if we desire to do that. This is the only freshwater source in this village. This is the church that they had built prior to me arriving so that they could have a seminar. There we had a prophecy seminar. Pastor Tim had asked me to do and preach the Mark of the Beast. So that night I preached the Mark of the Beast, showing the difference between Sabbath worship and Sunday worship. What I couldn't see, because it's totally dark, there's no lights around, so what I could not see, I could see all the immediate people around the church, but what I couldn't see across that river that I was taking a picture from at the church there just a second ago, across that river there was a couple hundred people just sitting on that bank. There was people all over this village that came to listen to this message on the Mark of the Beast. And so I just felt the Holy Spirit became very, very powerful upon this group of people. And I appealed to them to make a decision about worshiping God on His Sabbath day. Many people came forward. We'll see the results of that later on. So that was at night. Pastor Tim wakes up at 4:30 a.m. and preaches the same sermon while people are stirring and waking up in the morning. And so he's preaching the Mark of the Beast while people are crawling out of bed. And he's got this big loudspeaker that's up in a tree, pointed right towards the main part of the village where the main part of the people live. So that is your alarm clock at 4:30 a.m. Get out of bed. Here's some of the church members, but it's very fascinating. If you remember last week, we mentioned that these were Muslims. This was a Muslim village. The man on the left, he was an imam in the Muslim religion who has recently converted. He was baptized on this trip. I was actually able to baptize him. I've never actually baptized so many Muslim people. I've baptized some Muslim people in Africa, but not like this man. A whole lot of them. Here's some of them. That's Brother Antonio right here, who was the imam. Before I left for the Philippines, we had a board meeting, and the church board decided to send some funds to buy Bibles. And I want to tell you how critical it is for people to have Bibles. You know, when I preach, I tell people to check it out for themselves, right? You've probably heard me say that, even right here in our own church. You almost hesitate saying those kind of things there because most people don't have Bibles, and they don't have the money to buy a Bible. But once they get a hold of a Bible, and they begin reading, they can start seeing the truth for themselves. This is critical to them becoming established in the faith. And so with the $1,000 that our church donated, I bought over $1,000 worth of Bibles, and these are some of them. These are some of the Bibles that we gave out. Not only Bibles, but you'll notice Antonio has the Conflict of the Ages series in his hands. I tell you, that'll be powerful when he begins reading those. This was church service, the Sabbath after I left. 60-some people came to church that Sabbath. This is brand new church, by the way. Just barely built about a couple months ago. Or not even a couple months ago. Maybe a month and a half ago. It was built. Had the seminar. I finished it off on the Mark of the Beast, and there's people coming to church. It's just exciting to see what happens. All right, from there, from Lambton Bog, this is where we ended up last Sabbath. From Lambton Bog, and so we were down here in Lambton Bog and Sultan Kadarat. We moved a little bit further north, almost at the south part of North Cotabato, into a little village called Lamini. At Lamini, this is Pastor Tim's district that he works in. There's 4 main pastors. They divided up Mindanao in 4 different regions. Actually, there's 5 down in Zamboanga. But this is Pastor Tim's area. And the reason that he's going here is because there was one Seventh-day Adventist in this whole entire village. So that one Seventh-day Adventist says, Pastor Tim, we need you to do a seminar. So they invite Pastor Tim to do a seminar. So another village, we have to get out of our vehicle and we have to start walking. It's not a road. It's actually the overflow from a river when it really floods. You cross this river by Bamboo Bridge, and you can see how things are crumbling around people. Their house is about ready to fall into the river here. And so I saw these people asked Pastor Nanding, I said, what are people doing with those rocks? And so you see people over there throwing rocks up against that bank. They're going to try to shore up their house by putting a bunch of rocks there. You can see how the river just runs down. That's a trail, actually, that goes up to another part of the village. It's all washed out. So we have to take the higher bank. This is their only fresh water source. This is actually a pretty nice water source. Of course, it's got algae growing in it. Get used to the taste, I guess. But this is the church that was built there. There's now about 32 Seventh-day Adventists in this village now, just in the last few months. This is Pastor Tim and his wife Yan. They always repeat their name, by the way, Tim and Yan, and they always do these things with their names. But you'll notice how small this church is, totally outgrown their church. Now they're wanting to build another church, and so they had the material for it. And so we're going to help them out to see if we can finish out a church. This is going to be the children's division, part of the church, and then we'll build a bigger church for them. While we were there, we had a baptism. You notice I'm taking a picture from on top of this knoll. This is a very, very steep hill to get down to these little pools that they had made out of rocks. So while we were there, we baptized, I think, 8 people that Tim had ready. The pool is so shallow, I've never baptized people frontwards. It might be kind of weird. I said, would it be weird if I baptized people forwards instead of backwards? Well, the principle is that it's baptism, you get them under the water, right? But I said, well, is there any problem with me baptizing them forward? Because, going back, I'd be really laying them back. So I baptized them forward, just because it was so shallow. And here's some of the baptismal candidates that were baptized there. We're going to have a word of consecration with them. All right, from there. So I'm really excited to see how the Lord is going to work there in Lamini. Just with the people that are there. It's a village of about 1,000 people, and many people are now starting to realize who Seventh-day Adventists are now that we've come into the village, we've done a seminar, and we have a church now. All right, from there we went to Lemkati, North Cotabato. This is the North Cotabato region. Very exciting to see how the work is moving forward here. As we're traveling up to this village, very steep, up in the mountains, nestled in the valley of some very high mountains, I start seeing people that were dressing differently. That's when you know you get into the tribal regions of the Philippines. The certain tribes. And so to keep their traditions alive, children, this young girl here, they dress like this once a week for their school. And so I stopped and took a picture of her, and there's another girl right there. Some of the headdresses that they have become very, very elaborate, some of the stuff that they wear for their school. So it's not a school uniform, by the way. When we get to the village, I like to look around and just see how poverty-stricken that it really is. And when I notice things like this, I know we're out in the middle of nowhere. Because here, they are milling rice. And you go down to the lowlands, you'll have millers all over the place. But here, they mill it by hand, by pounding that rice by hand. And so these 2 young girls are pounding rice to get the hull off of the rice. And we ate it, actually. They pounded on this for hours. to get this hull off of this rice. And when they were pounding out of here, I left and did something else. I came back, they were still pounding on it. By about nightfall, they had it laid out and they were drying it out. And I think the next day we ate it. So I was like, man, that's precious grains that we were eating there. I thought this was quite unique. I had never seen this before. But kids in the village, and they told me they built these little bicycles themselves. And I thought that was pretty ingenious. And so I said, well, give me a demonstration. What do you do with these things? And so we're way up in the mountains, so it's very, very steep. There's lots and lots of valleys. Here's an example of what they do. So they ride down. Not all of them made it down to the bottom of the hill. Some of the wheels fell off, or something fell apart, or some little kid went crashing down. But I was like, oh, that's pretty ingenious. They even take little strips of rubber they try to find rubber someplace, and they'll cut that rubber out, and they'll put little rubber wheels on top of their wood. So I thought that's pretty ingenious. This is little Rachel. They brought this little girl to me, and they said, Pastor Mike, can you massage this little girl's legs to see if they can work better? I'm like, well, what happened to her? Well, she fell off a motorcycle. And I said, well, how long ago did she fall off a motorcycle? They said, it's about 3 weeks or more ago. I said, okay. I said, did it swell up really big? They said, yeah, it swelled up really, really big. I said, can she walk on this leg? They're like, oh, no, she hasn't been able to walk on it for 3 weeks. I'm like thinking to myself, it's broken. And they're like telling her to get up, walk. And I'm like, no, don't tell her to walk. So I'm just like, so they want me to massage her legs. And I said, no, she doesn't need massaging. So I took my thumbs and I ran them down the front of her tibia. And I found one, boom, boom. And I found 2 bumps on her bone. Apparently, the motorcycle that she was riding on, I'm guessing, hit her in the back of the leg, laid on her leg. And so if you look at the tibia, it's broken like this. And the two parts that are severed from the bone are sticking up. That's the bumps that I was seeing or feeling. And so I said, well, let's just put a little splint on it and to protect it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, Lord, it's near the end of my trip, and I don't have very much money left. But I'm like, Lord, I want to take this little girl to the hospital. I mean, I can't leave her like this. So I'm grappling in my mind what to do. I can't help everybody. But the Lord impressed me, take this little girl to the hospital. So the next morning, we took her to the hospital. And if I can just describe to you going to a hospital. Craig and Amanda, nurses, Corintha, anybody that's done hospital work, it's unbelievable what you run into. So you go to one room, you tell them, so they evaluate it, and they tell you what you do. And then you go to this pay station, and you pay first for whatever service that you're going to get done. So you go down the hall, and you pay at this one station. And then they take you into another room. And so they took me into this other room where the x-ray is. There's a ladder in there. There's a guy that's working on wires. And he's trying to put in this really sophisticated piece of equipment, electronic equipment, that you I thought it was pretty cool, put your x-ray into, it reads it, and then it emails it off to the doctor so the doctor can look at it without coming to the hospital, and then sends back whatever needs to be done. So this is cool. But here's these guys, they're working up there, pounding on things, putting holes in the wall. I mean, you got wires laying, wires everywhere. People walking in and out. There's just disorganization. It's just unbelievable to me. But anyways, we get this x-ray. They zoom in on it. Sure enough, broken right in 2 places. And so they cast her leg, and You know, when you look at this little girl, I thought maybe she was 4. She's like 9. Probably very malnourished. Her legs, I mean, I could put my hands around her legs. I mean, they were just so small, so small. So anyways, this is a picture of her after we had left. By the way, it cost $5 to get an x-ray, and that's all it cost me. Because she was in the tribal areas, the government provides 30,000 pesos for the first 30,000 pesos to get whatever medical work done. But the mother and the father didn't even have enough money to get her to the hospital. And that's all it would have taken. Just getting her to the hospital and then everything would have been done. But the hospital was quite a ways away. So we put the little girl in our vehicle and we took her to the hospital. And then the mother came. But I could tell the mother felt so bad. She just didn't have anything to do for her daughter. She just couldn't do anything. There's your casting system in the Philippines. I hope I never break anything while I am there. All right. This is Joylyn, the one on the left. I'd like to tell you a story about Joylyn. She's 16 years old, and her father is a pastor of the church that's called The Only Way. And so you can get from the title, the name of this church, that there is no other church that you can belong to except his church in order to go to heaven. And so Joylyn had a friend who came to her who was a Seventh-day Adventist and said, you know, I think you should come to this seminar with me. And she did. Pastor Tim was doing a seminar there, and because her father was a pastor, she had a Bible. This is, I'm going to tell you why it's so important we get Bibles in the hands of people there. While she started reading, and she was listening to the seminar, going through what Pastor Tim's sermon was about, she could read along in her own Bible. And as she's reading along, the conviction starts growing in her, I need to keep the Sabbath. And she studies it out herself. She studies out the Sabbath herself. And while I am there, she comes, and I could tell she was distraught about something. She was crying. And I said, Pastor Nonding, what's wrong with this young girl here? And he said, she wants to be baptized. I said, okay. But he told me the story that her father, since he's a pastor of the Only Way church, she's in trouble. He says, if you belong to that church, he says, I'll disown you. If you get baptized in the Seventh-day Adventist church, you're not going to be no longer a part of our family. So she came to me crying. She's like, I'm going to be baptized. I said, okay. I said, do you understand what you are going to do by being baptized? And I read these texts to her. When I got through reading these texts, everybody knows it well, we know that those of our own household will be our greatest foes. She says, I know, I've read that before. I said, do you realize that you may get just kicked out of your house and you won't have any place to live? She says, I realize that. And she makes a decision right there. She says, I'm going to be baptized. But I could tell in her mind she was really struggling. So before we left for the baptism, I asked one of the church members there, I said, is there any church member here that would take this young girl in? She said, and one lady said, right, absolutely, she can come live with me. And that was the house that we stayed at. And so we head to the baptism. This is how everybody heads to the baptism. Count how many are on that one motorcycle. There is 7 people on that motorcycle. This is why wrecks happen and people get hurt. And they use these kind of motorcycles. Other kind of motorcycles don't work up here because there's very, very steep hills. So they use these Yamaha 150s to get back and forth up of these steep hills and to carry all kinds of things. But anyways, we're heading to the baptism. There's Joylyn right there. third in line. And we get to the baptism, and I'm observing her. Is she really going to make this decision? Is she really? You can tell she's deep in thought. She's watching other people be baptized. This young lady right here is next in line, and then she's next. I was just praising the Lord when I saw her get down into the water. Because, you know, it's all because she had a Bible herself. She read it, and she's convicted by it. And that is so powerful to me. You know, I don't know if anybody of you saw a picture, 1936. Everybody's doing the sea Kyle at a shipyard. There's a man by the name of Augusta who has his arms folded like this. And he's not doing the sea Kyle, the German salute, Nazi salute. That reminded me of this young girl who said, I'm going to stand for the Lord. And so I was trying to keep up with news, what was happening here, because Pastor Tim stayed behind. She went home and she told her father, she says, I was baptized into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He said, get out of my house. She had to go, and she's now living with that family that said that they would take her in. And the father said, I won't pay for your schooling. I won't pay for anything. You are on your own. So I left money for her to go to school for 1 year. Now it's only 2,000 pesos. But it'll keep her through 1 year. But I'm going to continue to support someone like this that makes a decision to obey and follow God. Very exciting to see young people taking a stand for the Lord. Oh, it's just awesome to see it. You probably don't recognize that church, do you? If you remember from our last mission report last year, that very place that church is standing on is the church that the General Conference tore down. They said, you either become a part of us or we'll tear down your church. And so they tore it down. This church gave $2,000. Tim, he's like pastor, builder, excavator. He does it all. He just works. He's just unbelievable worker. Built this church, and he worked as hard as he could to get it as finished as it is right now. So he finished it up. Very, very nice church. You can see the benches that they put in. Very nice benches. This is the head elder of the church there. And he had a message. He has a message for you. He had a message for me. And this is what their message was. You can see some of the benches there. Yes. They all got up front because they wanted to say thank you to us. And they sang us a song. By the end of the song, there wasn't one dry-eyed person among the adults that were singing that song. And the song that they sung is that they hoped that all of us would meet in heaven. Now, I want you to listen. You might recognize the tune. The lady that took in the young girl. Her husband. She's crying. Husband back here in the back. anyways, that was a neat thank you to all of us. All right, from there, we traveled into Bukidnon. This is where the work started in Mindanao. We have 2 pastors in this area here and many Bible workers. I don't know exactly how many people we actually had in this joint worship of about 5 different churches in the area, but there must have been 300 to 400 people that met us there. And this is our meal that we had afterwards. But we had a baptism, and this is all of us heading to the baptism. We all get in these big rice trucks, and we head to a pool. This is another big rice truck. There was several vehicles that went. The baptism here was very, very special to me. Simply because I didn't know actually one person that was going to be baptized. But there, all of us show up at the baptism, and since I think there was 70 plus people to be baptized just at this pool here. And so I decided 3 of us would be doing the baptism, 3 of us pastors. And so we lined them up in 3 different lines. I mean, these are people from the Roman Catholic religions, Assemblies of God, Iglesia de Dios. I mean, there's all kinds of different kinds of churches that our pastors and Bible workers are going out, and they are winning souls to the Lord. So this is Pastor Edmar in the back. He works in the Davao region, which is down in the southern part of Mindanao. This is another pastor here, Fernando, that works in the Bukidnon area. So all 3 of us were doing the baptizing, but this is the most special part of the whole baptism. Remember little Angel? The one that had her leg amputated, that we sent money for. I didn't know she was going to be baptized. She was behind another adult, and she came when that person moved out of the way, and I saw little Angel. I was just like, "Wow, praise the Lord that this is happening." It's just special. Her father was baptized too.
Praise the Lord.
I'm going to read to you an email of what he said. But it says in Our High Calling 241, the kindly word, the thoughtful act, true politeness and hospitality will constantly exert an influence in favor of the Christian religion. And I thought about that one little part right there, just a thoughtful act of us sending money to help with a little girl who's insignificant but is precious to the Lord. We send money, and this is what her father said. This is Pastor Ting that is writing me and relaying the message of the Father, Angel's father. Peace and grace to our Lord be with you always. I left it just basically the way it was. I changed a few things. We would like to let you know that all the sisters of Angel, our little Angel, are joining us to worship God every Sabbath. So he has 7 kids, and all of them now are joining in worship. Because their father would lead them, only the mother of Angel, not yet. Yesterday, her father called me and expressed their thanks to your church because of your great supports, especially to Angel, that according to him had lost hope, but now is revived. And now she is awaiting another chance to have a prosthetic leg. So, praise the Lord, just from that one little kindly act, saying, you know what? I think we need to help this little girl. Now a whole Roman Catholic family is now, except the mother. We need to pray for the mother that she will soon join God's church. Okay, well, we better quickly move here. San Jose, San Fernando. So we're down here in Bukidnon area, and now we're moving up into this little peninsula up here in San Jose, San Fernando. This was the roughest road that I think I've ever been on. Just jar your whole entire body to get up here. And when you get to these villages, you look around. I just look around. I said, man, what is the village like? I mean, what's the children like? How poverty-stricken is it? When I start seeing corn, it is very, very poor, because people can eat twice as much corn as they can rice, and rice is much more expensive. So they're drying their rice out here, or their corn out here. And then I start looking around at the children. How are they dressed? Are they clean or are they dirty? Many, many dirty children in this one village. These are some school-age kids. They had just been from school. There's no motorized vehicles in this whole entire village. And so you do have some, I shouldn't say motorized, I said bigger vehicles, but you do have motorcycles out on top of the hills. And another reason, this is just one, but you know how poor they really are when they start making a living off whatever is growing around them. Could be out in the jungle, could be anywhere. Here they're making mats. They'll dry these little reeds out, and then they'll make mats. They'll weave mats out of them. And then I saw this, and I was like, oh, I knew what it was. But I said, do you still use this? Does anybody know what that is? If you went down to Bob's Red Mill, you'd see these big things. They're millstones. They're millstones. I've never seen a hand-cranked one. This is a hand-cranked one. Okay, here's a little illustration of how you would grind your corn so that you can have a meal. You'll notice there he's dropping in the hole a little at a time. And then notice what happens here as he continues to grind. You'll see the pieces of the corn flying out from the millstone. So what they would do, they would put a little tarp underneath there, or a little piece of plastic, whatever. They would find. You can see how big it is. And I said, you don't eat that, right? He's like, no, we got to grind that 2 or 3 times just to get it small enough to eat. So, yeah, this is what life is like. Grinding corn. And you can see how big the pieces are, right? I mean, you're not gonna go chewing on that. I mean, that would be too much. They make their another part of their living is going out into the jungle and gathering this fiber, and all these things are filled with fiber. And the young man, I was very curious about what they were doing, so I went up and asked the owner, talking through a translator. I said, so how long does it take to gather this fiber? It'll take 3 weeks. I said, okay. So I said, does that young man sleep out in the jungle for 3 weeks? And he said, yeah, he sleeps out in the jungle for 3 weeks all by himself with 3 horses. How many of us would do that? And they gather this fiber. It's very, very interesting. You see it hanging here. They're drying it, and they'll make clothing out of this. And so I felt it, and I was like, you're going to make clothing out of that? I mean, we're talking like sandpaper feeling stuff. I was like, wow. Here's a logging operation. I love to see how different villages always have something different. And this is very fascinating. This is a logging operation. These are called palkata. And they make, you and I would call it paneling. They call it plywood there. But it's just little thin paneling kind of stuff. But I was like, wow, I wonder how they got all these up here. And so here we go. This is what's so fascinating about some of these villages. Here's a footbridge across another river. River becomes the lifeblood of the village. So they're pulling all these logs out miles, kilometers away from the jungles, and they're dragging these logs with these carabao. And here they are. They've come a very long journey, so they let their carabao cool down in the water. And you'll notice there's people washing their clothes. There's people taking a bath. This is the only place that I think I've ever been in the world where I took a bath with a carabao that was right next to me. The lady's like, oh yeah, just the water's not running here at this little thing, this little spring here, so let's go up to this other one. I was like, okay, it's pitch dark. I can't see anything. And so I get up there. Of course, I turn my light off. I'm going to take a bath. And so I start hearing all this noise right next to me. I'm like, what in the world? Let me turn my light on here. Here's this carabao looking right at me. I'm like, these things are kind of scary looking too, man. I mean, they're kind of wild-eyed. The only people they really get used to are their owners because they handle them so much. This thing's looking right at me. I'm like, whoa. Here comes this guy. He just walks right past me. I'm taking a bath. Walks right past me, grabs the carabao, and takes him off about 10 feet. So this is what happens. So they wanted me to do the baptism. I said, I will absolutely not get in that water. Schistosomiasis is a little parasite that lives on snails. And I said, well, I will not get in that water. When you have carabao going through there, and they get washed in the river along with all the other things, with your dishes and clothing and everything else. I said, no. So somebody else did the baptism. But very, very fascinating just to see how they do this. So this is a guy heading back out into the jungle. He's dropped his logs off. He's cooled down his carabao, and he's heading back out to the jungle. Another guy riding on his logs. Is this the video? Yeah. So here's just a little bit of what I'm on that footbridge, remember? And it's cable suspended. And the kids are running up and down it, so that's why you're going to see all this bouncing around. But I just love to see these kind of things. It's cool because it's so unique. So they'll get to the other side. And it's kind of interesting. They're giving these animals kind of cues. They'll give it different kinds of noises to tell it what to do. You'll hear different clicking sounds. They get them over here, and then they rest them in the water. That carabao knows exactly what to do. It just flops down in that water, and then they wash them. They wash their noses, and they wash their body. It's kind of interesting. And, of course, they have fun on the bridge, too. But this is the reason that we went to San Jose, San Fernando. My text that I quoted to you is in Revelation 18. I was going to name this subtitle, this mission report, Come Out of Her, My People. Very fascinating. This pastor of the Assemblies of God Church had a church of about 200 people. And this pastor decided one Sunday he was going to preach about the Sabbath because he thought Sunday was on the Sabbath. And so he got his Catholic Bible out and he started preaching. He started preparing to preach for the Sabbath. And he came to the front of the Bible. Can you imagine this? This has got to be providence. He comes to the very front of the Bible, and there is a glossary of terms of about 30 words. And just so happened, the word Sabbath and the word Sunday are both in the glossary. And he read Sabado. You can see there's some markings right next to his Bible there. He reads the word Sabado, and it says it's on the seventh day of the week. And he's like, well, that's interesting. And then he goes down to the word Sunday, Domingo, and it says that's the first day of the week. He's like, why is Domingo called the first day of the week and Saturday called the Sabbath day? He says, okay, I'm going to study this out. So he went right from Genesis, and he started going through every single text in the Bible that dealt with the word Sabbath. And he said, my glossary's right. When he gets to the end of the Bible, he says, my glossary's right. The seventh day is the Sabbath. That's on Saturday and not on Sunday. He said, wow, what am I supposed to do now? I'm a pastor of 200 people. He said, well, I can't be quiet. But he said, I'm going to start preaching about the Sabbath. But I'm just not going to tell them which day it's on. So he starts preaching about the Sabbath and all the benefits of the Sabbath and how we're supposed to keep the Sabbath. But he never tells them whether it's Saturday or Sunday. Till one Sabbath, or one Sunday, he comes to his congregation, he says, we worship on the wrong day of the week. Congregation's like, what are you talking about, worshiping on the wrong day of the week? He says, yes, we're worshiping on the wrong day of the week. He says, here's the proof. Holds up his Catholic Bible. He says, right here, it says Sabbath. It's the seventh day of the week. Domingo, first day of the week. And as a result, there were some leaders of his organization there. They just fellowshipped him immediately right then. And then his church members forsook him. But remember the story of Nicodemus? There started to come some people to him by night, like Nicodemus. Hey, Pastor, what were you talking about Sabbath and Sunday? Can you tell us more? And they'd come to him and start asking all kinds of questions. Pretty soon, he has about 70 people worshiping with him in his own home. And so, as a result of this, using a Catholic Bible, he starts writing down a bunch of notes because one of our pastors finds out about what's happening here. Pastor Ting, he travels up and he talks to Juanito. He says, Juanito, there's all kinds of things that you need to learn beyond the Sabbath. And so he teaches him for 10 months. He travels up there every once in a while. And he teaches him about the three angels' messages, the whole Seventh-day Adventist message. Within 10 months, he has a whole group started. And he is now the pastor of this church. And I was like, well, I wonder how much he knows about our Seventh-day Adventist. I want to see actually how much he knows. I said, so Juanito, what do you know about 1844? He says, well, that's when the judgment began. So do you know anything else that happens then? Well, that's when God started his judgment and opening the books of record. And so he could tell. He says, but he says, honestly, he says, I can't really prove it from the Bible. It's very, very difficult for me. And you can imagine someone who doesn't have any education trying to figure out all these numbers and when the dates are and history. And so, but he's got all the concepts down. So I quizzed him about the state of the day. He says, well, yeah, people sleep in the grave. They don't go to heaven when they die. Our souls are not immortal. So he starts telling me all these things. So came to his wife. His husband's out of the way, and I started asking the wife. I said, this is, let me go back here. The lady here. I said, so what'd you do when you came to the subject of jewelry? She says, oh, I'm so happy I could take off my jewelry. I don't wear that stuff anymore. It was just all vain anyway. It just puffed up myself. I'm like, whoa. So she was happy that I started quizzing her about some other things. Man, these people are solid. Solid in the faith. I just love to hear these kind of messages. I mean, people are hearing that voice speaking to them, saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. Get out of Babylon, it's not safe. So these people are coming out of Babylon, even the pastors. So while we're there, remember again, I would not do the baptism in this place, but there is 30 people prepared for baptism there. There was some miscommunication while we were there. Only some people were able to be baptized, but there's going to be more baptized as time goes on. And these 70 people are going to grow into many. Because there's many people that are still coming to him saying, hey, Pastor, what were you talking about? Just like those Nicodemuses. So I want to close with this slide here. I want you to keep in mind how important it is that we put Bibles in the hands of the people that are there. Spirit of Prophecy books. You'll notice there the Spirit of Prophecy books that he's holding. They're holding in their hands Desire of Ages and Patriarchs and Prophets and Acts of the Apostles. And they have the great controversy already. It's in a different book. But this is how the work is moving forward. How much does the Bible cost? It costs $7. American dollars. Yep. That's a lot of money for them. I mean, you consider that you're making sometimes 100 pesos a day, and you have 400 pesos to put out on a Bible. And so some of these rural villages, I would venture to guess that nearly 80% of their income goes to food, to feed them and their families. So, okay. Does anybody have any questions before we close? It's pretty late. But if you do have questions, yes.
What can we do to help with the kids with the defect?
So it would require surgery. So Kevin's wanting to know what would, how we could help out, how much it would cost. No, I don't know.
You have an avenue, though,
Yep, we do.
if you donated the money, you would know what.
The same hospital that the little girl got her x-ray was be the same place that they could get that surgery done. So it's about 40 kilometers away.
Can you give us an estimate, and we could just vote?
I have asked for an estimate. They have not got it to me yet. So I would like to know. But things move very, very slowly in these parts just because of travel. Just traveling.
Or could we take up a special collection right now and just preemptively?
I wasn't planning on it, but if you guys would like to take up a special offering, Kim, or John. So the Southern Island speaks Cebuano. And so those are actually translated into their local dialect. No, it is not. I presented something to our board last